What's up, everybody? Welcome to A Bit Unraveled, comedy podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hansinger, and let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of A Bit Unraveled. Very excited for this week. We have one of my very good friends, one of my longest friends here in LA, the very funny Chad Damiani. Let's bring him in, guys.
Hello, my friend.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Just trying to get better with this ring light.
So
I figured this would be a good opportunity.
That is a fantastic backdrop.
Oh yeah, it's a big painting.
Is it? Oh, it looks three-dimensional. It looks real.
Yeah, no, I've been doing a lot of stand-up stuff. I mean, it is real, Ryan. It's just a painting.
Well, yeah, but I feel like you could touch the leaves and.
Yeah, I know, right? It sort of
Like
creates this sort of depth.
Yeah, it has depth. Yeah.
I'm trying to mix it up, you know. Old guy, new tricks. You know how it is, Ryan.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. You're wearing a turtleneck, which I'm surprised to see.
I thought this would. I thought I'd mix it up on you and wear a turtleneck and see where it went.
You specifically asked if you could wear no sleeves.
Show the guns off.
And you came more covered than I've ever seen.
I was actually in a tank top from my workout today, and I was like, you know what? Because I actually was gonna wear a hat too, but then I thought it looked like the guy in the last podcast wore a hat, so I was like, I'll just do the turtleneck.
I gotcha. Yeah, he didn't. That was a photo. But yeah, you're good. You're good. I like the look.
Are you sure? Should I get the hat?
It's too late. It's too late, Chad. The hat's out the window.
All right, fair enough.
I love it. It's great. I honestly didn't know you owned sleeves. For those who don't know, Chad is typically in a tank top, just showing off the guns.
Yeah. I have like a big Hanna-Barbera sort of mentality with branding, where like, you know, don't have too many outfits.
Yes.
You know, if you wear the same stuff all the time, essentially, you galvanize in a person's memory much easier.
Yeah. I've had the same thinking. Mine was with V-necks, which it just isn't the same. It's not a branding thing.
I mean, you do own a lot of V-necks.
I own I have like 50 shades
20,
of V. Like,
at least 20.
At least, yeah. I felt like that was my thing, and it's easy because I know I'm just gonna wear a V-neck every day. I just have to pick the color, and it's like good to go.
So for me, the addendum to like the tank top thing is, I thought, like, what if my dress up is a turtle and my everyday is a tank, right? Okay. So then it's like, so now this choice, if you think about it, represents two different states of being, not just outfits, but like I'm kind of sophisticated right now.
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm pretty comfortable in a gym. I'm a regular guy.
I like that. Are you wearing a tank top currently underneath the?
I will say this: I had to take off a tank top to put on this turtleneck.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I almost like. I think it'd be sweet if you just had one underneath, and you. I mean, you've been known to rip a shirt or two. Just.
I spend upwards of, even this year, because I've been ripping a lot of shirts in the park shows, which we recently stopped because of the lockdown.
Right.
But I did the math, and I'm like, I'm going to lose $250 this year on Hanes ribless tees.
That's amazing.
Tagless ribless tees, yeah.
That's amazing.
But I'm not going to, these are like $20 or $25 each, these, because I have like multiple turtlenecks, very similar, but I'm like, these are too expensive to rip. That's like, the laugh isn't worth it to me.
Right.
I'll spend $4 on a laugh, but that's about it.
Hysterical. I love that you have a shirt budget.
Yeah, it didn't start that way, and I think I can write it off, honestly. I mean, I certainly have enough photographic evidence that I'm
totally.
Yeah.
I think you can write that off.
I'm already worried as an artist that I'm always going to get audited, so it's like you're always like playing that game of like, will this be the item that flags the IRS? $250 in Hanes tank tops. Yeah, Hanes, by the way, I've mentioned twice. So
yeah, we're plugging that. If we can get some ads for Hanes on here,
maybe.
Yeah, that's always like an interesting thing because, like, as an artist, you're supposed to, I guess, you get into this rhythm of writing things off, but yeah, you don't know what that thing's going to be that pushes it over.
It can be, and the stuff we write off is so dumb anyway. So it's like, for whatever reason, I feel like having a tank top budget of $250 is like custom made for red flagging. Like it's like,
Right.
oh yeah, that's for sure. But no one spends $250 a year on tank tops.
Right. I had a friend who got audited, and he was pushing it. Like he was like upgrading his car, which was his work vehicle, but he also put on like a new muffler and stuff, like
Yeah, you got to be careful with that stuff.
and they got him.
What was he, an actor?
Yeah, he's an actor, comedian. So
yeah, I mean, unless he's a stunt man, I don't think you can write off putting a new muffler on your car.
I'm gonna tell him to start doing stunts, and he'll probably be like, if I can keep this this old classic car going, then yeah.
Yeah, just get a TikTok, tell him to shoot 3 videos of him doing cool shit with his car. To me, that'll get you right through the IRS.
I think so. I think that's it. As long as something's on video to prove you used it for that. I don't know. I don't work for the IRS, so I'm going to get people in trouble.
But don't listen to either of us if anyone's watching. Neither of us have any good advice when it comes to your taxes.
No, we're just rolling the dice. Well, cool. Well, I'm happy to have you on.
Yeah, nice to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you. This is the hangout these days. Just zooming. But yeah, to give a little backstory, Chad is one of probably the first person I met in LA, I think.
Right up there, yeah.
Gosh, like 10 years ago now. It was literally, I went into UCB class. I think we met the first UCB 1, or was it 2?
No, we met. Yeah, we met in 101.
Okay, but then we met a couple of the other people from our group, Cat Bath. I think in level 2. But yeah, so that was like the first week that I got here in LA. I was driving out and I missed the first class because I was en route from Virginia to LA.
Boy, that's too like such a young person's game too. It's like, I'm not wasting any time. I've got a 5-year plan for Los Angeles, so I'm going to get into UCB the first week I'm here. No wasting.
Yeah, that's 100%. That's that naive. Here we go. I wanted to live like a block away from UCB, and that was the game plan. Like that was. Day one, I was like, I'm going to take these classes. I'll be in UCB in like 2 months. I'm going to I'm going to take some intensives. I'm going to, and it doesn't work like that, but fun nonetheless. But yeah. And, we met great people.
All of us have had some successes and stuff, but none of the Cat Path gang, I guess Tipper and Chris, who are friends of ours, they had a couple shows that we were in on the UCB main stage, but like they never got any like mod consideration or Herald. Like, I mean, really, it was like, I mean, if there was a plan for UCB to be our gateway, boy, we botched that big time.
Right. Yeah, it's a system. There's a whole game to all of that stuff.
For sure.
But
there used to be, at least.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. I want to talk a little bit about, I definitely want to talk about the stuff you're doing now because you've had a lot of stuff going this year. But I also want to backtrack a little bit because I think you have a super interesting story. Because as far back as I know, like career stuff was wrestling. Your wrestling career, and which I was like, I couldn't remember because I'm not a huge wrestling fan, and I was like, is it WWE or WWF? And I looked up.
Well, interestingly, it's not. So I will explain. So I was in a company called World Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
Which was the main competitor to, at the time, WWF, before they had their whole lawsuit with the World Wildlife Fund and changed their name to WWE. Yeah. So like around in 1996, you probably can't tell just by watching the video, but I'm a little older than Ryan. I'm just, for probably people watching couldn't tell, but I am a few years older than Ryan.
Just a couple of years.
A couple years. We don't even count. We've never counted. But in 1996, I was in Atlanta. That was when the Olympics were in Atlanta. And I was working for like this project that now sounds like Quibi a little bit. It was called Spiv, and it was supposed to be like a website network that was just for online, like very much. It was way ahead of its time, and it lasted about 9 months, and it was a disaster. I mean, we were bad. They hired all young people to run it, and we were unqualified, and we also didn't know what the internet was, and we were still on modems. But the one good thing that came out of this experience was that I met the team that ran World Championship Wrestling's website, which was just being started when I got there. And so I stayed friends with these guys, and I had been a wrestling fan. And I decided to leave once there was no job there anymore. So I guess they decided for me to leave. I'm not sure. But I went to New York to like pursue playwriting because I've always made really snappy, practical decisions when it comes to career. I was always like, what has the best chance? Oh, I'll go and try to be a playwright.
Yeah.
And while I was there, these guys who I stayed in touch with, they needed content for their website. So I started writing reviews of TV shows. So I'd just stay up, I'd watch the TV show, I'd email them a review of it, and they put it on the website. And from there, because they knew I was an actor, which I was not at the time, an actor or a writer. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. They called me one time and they're like, hey, there's this weird thing that you might be interested in. We have this hotline we just started. And at the time in WCW, our big angle, which is like our big storyline that was helping us compete with Vince McMahon and the WWE, was we had contracted several big talents that used to be on his show. And we were kind of making it look like they had that WWE had invaded our show. So,
yeah. Nice.
And they called it the New World Order, and it was wildly popular. We were actually for almost 2 years beating Vince, which is unheard of, you know. And but they had a hotline. Now, this is when hotlines existed, 1-900 numbers. And so
Right.
the idea was that these guys were all these big stars, millionaires, were going to leave 10-minute messages that you could listen to. And they were like, listen, these guys promised us they were going to leave these messages, but just in case one of them forgets, listen at midnight. And if you hear the old message from the day before, you record a message, because if you don't, and people call 2 days in a row and it's the same message, they can ask for their money back. But listen, we're going to pay you $150 it was per message. And I know that sounds like a lot, but the fact is we need you to stay up till midnight every night, and you might only do one a month. Because these guys promised, they do it.
Yeah.
These wrestlers, they never left a message. I had more money than all my broke ass theater friends.
Oh my God.
I'd record these messages, but what happened was I had no information. I was in
Right.
New York City. I didn't have any inside information. That's what people wanted. So I would actually record these 10-minute like skits. Basically, I don't call them sketches because they don't even earn the distinction of sketch. They were skits for sure.
Yeah.
And it would just be all dumb. I would just make fun of the show. Like I would take the characters from the show and I would rename them and do voices. And my roommate at the time, who I ended up writing with, I still work with on occasion out here. He was my roommate, also theater guy. He would do voices and I would be the interviewer and I'd do voices. So I kept leaving these messages, and unbeknownst to me, while I had to check at midnight to make sure these messages were left, there was a guy in Atlanta who had to check at 9 a.m. to see if I'd checked. And these messages kind of became like a hot item at this Smyrna, Georgia office because, you know, I was making fun of the show. So I was told at one point upwards of like 30 people would meet in this massive conference room they had down there, and they would just turn on my message and listen, drink their coffee, and kind of laugh at the message. So I had no idea. I'm just trying to be a theater star. I'm in these terrible showcases. I'm just like broke as a joke. Because even making that much money in New York, you're still broke.
Oh yeah.
And so one time they were like, listen, do you want to make $200? You want to make another $200? I'm like, sure. They're like, take the train. They wouldn't even fly me. Take the train to Boston because we're going to do an internet event there. And it's going to be a pay per listen. So like I said, Ryan and I are a couple of years different. So I was from an era where an internet pay per listen existed.
Oh my goodness.
And they were going to
I've heard of a pay per listen on the internet.
Yeah, no.
But now they have it. It's almost come back in a way.
Yeah.
Through like Patreon and stuff. Like there's ways of
podcasts and stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Okay.
So and they had some like really shitty thing where like every like 5 seconds you'd get a still image of the show, like just a very unappealing visual process. But they were like, we need you to come up. Not, by the way, to do any, they wanted me to run cable because the budget was so low. There would be a grip because the budget was so low. They didn't have money and the union guys in Boston weren't going to do it for what they charge. So like, we're going to sneak you in, you'll run all the cable. And I went because I wanted to meet wrestlers. Like I was a fan, like I loved wrestling as a kid. fell out of it a little bit, but then got back into it in college.
And then
So I
picked it
go
back
up
up when you started improv.
Yeah, oh my God. In a big, who knew?
You bring wrestling into improv. Like,
oh, for sure. That's my secret weapon. And
I know.
And it's not so secret either. I tell everyone, but like, no one seems to want to do it, which may be like a commentary on my work. But so I'm there.
I love it though, because like, and that's for me being a small person. It's nice working with another improviser who has like those abilities to like lift.
Oh yeah, I was always
like,
grabbing you by the back of your jeans.
I don't know how I didn't lose more belts, man. You would like,
yeah,
lift me up
I love grabbing that belt. I love grabbing that belt.
I was like, how is this even happening? I was shocked, but yeah. Anyways,
so I go up there, no bullshit. This is what I'm wearing. I've got construction boots, jean shorts, jorts, and at the time these chame flannel like I was dressed like a weird pirate. Like I was just a dirtbag, and I'm running cable, and I'm more than happy to do it. And I'm seeing some stars of like wrestlers I know, and I'm not even talking to them. I'm still like, this is amazing. And I was also like, I was excited to stay in a hotel room. It wasn't even my hotel room. It was my friend Dave Cunningham's hotel. I was just going to get to stay in it. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is great. Cause I was so broke. And so I'm literally doing that thing when you run cable where you're like doing this. And Cunningham comes over and goes, listen, Gene Okerlund, who I don't know if you ever heard that name, but he was a famous announcer. Like he used to do a lot of stuff with Hulk Hogan. Gene Okerlund was his name. And they're like, Gene was supposed to be the commentator, but he got, I'll never forget, he got food poisoning from a chicken focaccia sandwich. They said. I remember because this is like this whole day is burned into my brain. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, sucks for you guys. Like, I'm just like, and they're like, so since you do the hotlines, you're the closest thing we have to an announcer. So we need you to call the show. I had never done communications. I don't watch sports. I'd never commentated on anything in my life. Wow. And I was like, when they said it, it just went right through me. I was like, that thing where you're just like, oh, this is, and they're like, we need you to go out to the ring right now. Like, right. So wow. I'm like, because I just finished running the cable. So I just finished running the cable. So all of a sudden, like, and there's I just remember walking out in the Boston Garden, sold out Boston Garden.
In the shorts? In the shorts and the boot?
All I had. It's all I had.
Chame?
The chame, the gray chame top.
Man.
So it was all I had. And I'm walking out and I'm just surrounded with people. And I sit down next to this guy, Mark Madden, who is still to this day, like a pretty huge sports radio guy in Pittsburgh. And I think he does, but he's like, who the fuck are you? He's like, I'm the other commentator. But he's like, what are you talking about? No one had contacted him. No one told him. And so we start, and he's like, I like Mark, but he's like, his whole thing is he's like one of those sports radio bullies kind of guy, he has a voice like this. So he's really loud.
Like
so he's
Bulldog from Frasier?
Yeah, basically, exactly. It's totally. Yeah. And so he's just running me over, and I don't blame him. Like, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was kind of like trying to do it, and I was sucking. And like, we were halfway through the first match, and I'm like, I'm going to lose this. Not only am I sucking, I'm going to lose this great like hotline gig. This is going to be the end. And I was just like, kind of like, fuck it. And I just started making fun of the show. Like, I just started making fun of it. And I remember specifically, there was an old-timey wrestler named Greg the Hammer Valentine, and he was in the ring, and he wore these naked tights, and he had an actual claw hammer on the back, on the ass part of the tights, because he was Greg the Hammer Valentine. Okay, and I just went on a fucking tear about, like, I was just like, what does that even mean, having a hammer on the, like, in the ass part of your pants? Like, I was like, it's like, this like, he's going to hammer people with his ass? He's going to get his ass hammered? Like, I was being like, so, because I'm like, I'm fired, baby. I'm fired. And,
right. You're just going for it.
Oh, Madden's laughing, but he's laughing, looking at me like he goes, oh, well, it's nice knowing you, kid, like this and that. But two of the big stars, these guys, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who are really big stars in this New World Order, they heard it and they thought it was funny. And their whole thing was being like smart ass funny guys. Yeah. This is something you should know about almost every music. Cause I worked for Ryan Seacrest. I've been in wrestling, but like everyone who does something else that we die to do just wants to be funny. They just want to be funny. Yeah. That's all they want. Yeah. And like, they're so excited. A laugh is the laugh is the purest, most beautiful thing you can get, right? Even more than like cheers and roars. So all of a sudden I hear their very undistinguishable, like, or very like clear voices. And they're now doing it with us. Like, so for the whole night, we're all just making fun of the show. And Madden, like the little turncoat that he was, he immediately jumped on board once those guys came on to what I was doing. Like at first, he's just like, yeah. And well, I left that night. Like by the way, just a detail. At the end of the night, they're in a cage match against, I believe it was Sting and Macho Man Randy Savage. It was like a huge event at the Boston Garden. And at the end, they cheated to win, and they're getting booed, and people are throwing food. And Kevin Nash is like 7 foot tall. Someone hit him with a thing of curly fries, and he caught it, right? And he walked over, and through the cage, he fed me a curly fry, which at that point, I thought life will never get better. Like, I just got fed a curly fry by Kevin Nash at Boston Garden.
By 7 foot Kevin Nash, like
7 foot superstar Kevin Nash
handing you a curly fry.
That's right through his hand, he fed me this curly fry, and I got on the train thinking I was fired. But what a way to go! I was like, what a way to go! And those guys, now again, this is only what I was told third hand, but I guess those guys went back and were like, this kid's really funny, and he's like doing what they're doing on the internet. He's making fun of shit. He's trolling. Trolling wasn't a word, but I was doing it. And that Monday, I get a phone call, and it's someone I never heard of before. And they're like, we want to fly you down to Florida to talk about your contract. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they flew me down, and they offered me an announcing contract, which then I did for 5 years. Like by the way, I talked to my dad like the whole time going down, and I had all these numbers in my head of what I was going to offer. Try to get, because I'm like, because I had no leverage. 24, no leverage. But I'm like, my dad's like, you gotta do this, and you gotta do that, and you see if you can get insurance. And I remember this guy Jay Hossman walked in, and he looked like a little Italian Bob's Big Boy. I'll never forget that. Like, he just said a little, and he goes, listen, and he just quoted this number, which was twice as much I was going to ask for, and he goes, that's the number. We're not negotiating. And I was like, all right, I'll put twice the number that I wanted.
You're like, wow, I was going to say like 24,000. He's like,
oh my God. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. So that was the birth of Chad Chimay.
Chad Chimay, classic Chimay comedy on Instagram, guys.
I would love if that was like your announcer stage name, like just Chad Chimay.
Do you know what it was?
No, what was it?
Deli Boy.
Was it Deli Boy? Oh, that's great.
And I'll tell you why, because when I was doing the hotlines, I was like, no one I will ever meet will be listening to this hotline. This is a different type of person. And I only did it because I knew they were going to put an ad in the magazine, and I wanted to show my college friends, because as a joke in college, I called myself the Deli Boy. Like, we'd watch wrestling and we all had names, so we were total nerds. And so I made it just so I could show them this WCW magazine where it said Chad Deli Boy Damiani, because I thought it was so funny. And I got saddled with that shit for 5 years for this funny thing I did for my friends.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, it was fun.
That's awesome.
And to what you're saying too is, when I started doing improv with you, I had, I guess I'd moved to Los Angeles, and I'd been there like 6 or 7 years. And this was between like wrestling and this and that. And when I started in comedy, I was only doing it to get out of the house and stuff. And when I started improv, I just wanted to get it right. Like, I was like, what are you teaching me? I want to get it right. A lot of these guys who do this, but again, I wasn't a career thing. I was writing and making a living at it. I was very lucky to make a living at it.
But I wanted to touch on that a little bit too, because I think what a lot of people don't know, I have a lot of friends who are writers and stuff, and coming up, a lot of people don't know about the kind of work you did. I think it's interesting because that the type of writing and the path you were on is kind of unique, in which kind of like you were writing for like projects. There's a lot of people who come up through like the mailroom and through assistant work and stuff like that. But you and your writing partner were actually getting like, you were pitching shows?
They're called assignment. Open writing assignments, they were called. Well, the way it kind of started was when I came out here, that same guy from New York that I talked about doing the hotlines with me, my roommate, we started working together. I was out of wrestling. I really didn't know what to do with myself. I was shocked to discover that being a professional wrestling announcer wasn't eye candy on a resume. I was shocked to find that everyone didn't want to hire something. That they weren't like, oh, this completely tracks with this job. So we started writing together, and we spent years writing really bad movies together. We just didn't know how to do it. And but during that time, I was like a salesman. Like I had gotten the best sales training you could possibly imagine as a wrestling announcer. All you do is sell.
Yeah.
Everything's the best thing ever. Everything's the reason to tune in the next week. So at first we sold a few reality show projects at that time when like Man versus Animal, like when it was like reality was like wild, crazy shit. I guess it is again. I guess it is again. But back then it was all like Joe Millionaire, you know, like it was all these like crazy shows with these hooks and we sold, you know, and again, both of us had to work. I was working as an announcer for motorcycle racing at the time, for a little money. And we both had to work.
There wasn't anywhere to go from wrestling.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is the one place. They hated me there because of the wrestling. They hated me.
Oh, really?
Like, this is a real sport.
Oh,
They're like, I'm like, well, I was like, you know, Supercross, by the way, involves real athletes, but I don't know if you can call it a real sport. I mean, you know, indoor, like jumping berms and triples. Like, I was like, yeah, these guys are amazing athletes, but this is a weird thing that's going on. But so I was doing that, but we did reality. We sold a bunch of reality shows. We made a pilot with these two directors that were friends of ours that did the Crank movies. Like we did that for a while. We worked, like I had mentioned earlier, we were writers for Ryan Seacrest's morning radio show. We would go and we'd type in things he could say onto an AOL Instant Messenger board. And like, because he was so busy, like editing and taking calls, and he was just such an entrepreneur. It was like, he was actually a pretty funny guy, you know, I mean, not like maybe our humor, but he was charming and funny.
He's got personality, you could tell.
He's got personality for sure. But but you know, he just didn't really have time to kind of listen. So that's kind of what we did for him. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we wrote this script called Kamikaze Love. And it was a sort of something we wrote for Cube Vision, Ice Cube's company. And it, like, they didn't pay us for it. They were like, if you guys write something, we'll try to sell it. You know, like, we're like, that's the best offer we've gotten.
Right. Yeah.
We spend 9 months doing something you might do something with, was like the best offer. And that script caught fire. It sold immediately to Screen Gems. It never got made. You know, it made the Blacklist that year, the same year as like some really big, like Slumdog Millionaire was on the list we were on. We were ahead of Slumdog Millionaire, and all these other. Election was on that list. Do you remember that with Kevin Spacey? Like some really kind of big indie movies were on this list. And then to what you were talking about earlier, what we ended up doing for a long time was we'd go to studios when they had projects, and they would have writing teams or writers pitch them how they would do the project. Mm-hmm. And then if they liked your pitch, they would offer you a contract, usually for 2 drafts of a script, you know. And we worked with like all kinds of crazy, interesting. We worked for Bryan Singer. We worked for Robert Zemeckis. We worked a bunch for Brett Ratner before the shit hit the fan there. You know, in fact, one of my favorite stories was, you know, we were meeting all these people with money and wealth, and like we were just still broke. And we went to Brett Ratner's house, and you have to know, if you go to Brett Ratner's house, everyone gets the tour. Like you just, they tell you like, look, he's going to give you a tour. Just go on it. Be interested in everything. And like a couple things from this tour that I'll never forget was, one, he took us into his bedroom, nothing strange, just to show us. Yeah, he had this big flat TV, which he said he paid like, I don't know, $25,000 for, which now would cost $1,000. So I remember that. Okay.
But he's also just pointing out how much everything costs.
Oh yeah. And he's telling you cost and price. Like, so
that's 25,000. That's 40 grand bed right there. Oh my God.
But then he turns the TV on. He goes, "You're never going to believe this." He goes, "You know, I love movies. I love movies more than anything." And he shows us, he goes, "There's a company and they have digitized 10,000 movies." And so I'm like, and it was like a T1 line. He goes, "I can watch any of these 10,000 movies I want. They digitized all of them for me. I spent $250,000 getting the service." 2 years later, Netflix comes out. It's Netflix. He paid $250,000 to have private Netflix. I just love that so much.
Crazy. That's insane.
And the other thing that happened, there's more us looking like idiots, which was more common, was he took us to his pool, and there's this huge bronze Tibetan head. Do you know those things, like those religious Tibetan heads?
Yeah.
And I'm saying like this thing must weigh 5 tons. It's massive. It's up to here on me. And he goes, "Yeah, you know, I had to use a crane to get it up here, and it almost rolled down and broke through that wall. And Bruce Springsteen lives in that. He would have been mad." And like, so we're like, "Wow, great." And he goes, "It's really heavy. It's like 5 tons." And we're like, "Yeah, it looks heavy." And he goes, "Seriously, try to move it." And we're like,
"What?"
We're like, "We can't move this." We're like, "We couldn't move something 1/10 of this." And
right.
And he goes, seriously. And so then me and my GP are like, ugh, we're just pushing this thing. It's fine. Like, just like, yeah, this thing it didn't move at all. Like,
yeah, about 5 tons. Yeah, this is
five tons is definitely over my max. This is definitely over my max. But yeah, we did that for years. And then, you know, it was interesting. I think our careers were always kind of, we would ride these waves. Like we did that, didn't get any movies, like a bunch of movies. People seemed to be happy with the movies, didn't get made for one reason or another, big directors, this and that. And then from there, that started to die down. And so then we moved into, we had an opportunity to, I forget her name now. Who's did you ever see Desperado? You know the woman in Desperado?
I have not.
Okay. She's famous, and I'm really embarrassed to not be able to remember her
everybody
name.
IMDb it, which at home. And
she's so famous that it's obscene that I don't know. But anyway, she had a project at CBS, and we had been talking to this production company about something else, and they're like, hey, you know, we need someone to write this pilot for the Cisco Kid. Like, we have a TV show based on the Cisco Kid. They had done it the year before, and it had been so terrible that, like, it was just like this embarrassment and it was, I remember one detail about the pilot was, it was, instead of just like making a modern remake of the Cisco Kid, it was about a guy who watched the old Cisco Kid TV show, and then his dad dies, and then his dad comes to him in visions dressed as the character from the TV show. I mean, it was just one of these, like,
they tried to do too much with it.
Too much.
And
so we went in, and again, what I was always good at, and like, this is not, JP's good at it too, but I think he would even say, like, my specialty was sales, right? Yeah. We went in, we had a pitch, and so we got to write this pilot, and got paid to write it, and like got to experience that network pilot season development deal madness, which is like you're writing 12, 14 hours a day through Christmas, through New Year's, trying to make these deadlines. And from that, kind of getting a taste of it, we, over the next 5 years, sold 4 network TV show development deals, which, you know, just puts you in a big pot of pilots that will, you know, and it was exciting and it paid well. What you learn through that process, and that process, by the way, almost doesn't even exist anymore. You know, just similar to the open writing assignments, it's very different. It's not that it doesn't exist, but not like it did exist. Now,
well, pilot season's essentially like gone, right? It's just kind of a rolling thing at this point.
The networks still kind of try to get some scripts in for January because they still do the upfronts,
right?
So there's still like a process, but it's not the way it was certainly anymore. But what would happen is you would sell your project, and you know they paid pretty well, but then you'd be like, we bought 40 of these, we're gonna use 8. Oh, by the way, Dick Wolf is one of them, and he has a put deal. So if we don't make his, we get penalized. Also, George Clooney is one of them. Like, so by the time you realize there were like 2 slots, right? There were like 2 open slots, and you know, like, and still, like, we weren't those slots. Someone did something right. I can remember one of the most embarrassing ones we sold. And again, I think the script was fine, but it's just such a, like, at the time we were just trying to sell sensational ideas. Is we came up with a modern reboot of Oliver Twist.
Okay.
Oliver's a woman, and essentially it's gone in 60. Like Fagin, the Fagin character, the guy who gets all the orphans to steal for him. It's a much sexier Fagin, you know. Like, and like it was really, you know, and I honestly, it was fun. Like, it was a real fun. And I remember it was with NBC, and they were really excited about it. And they're like, "This is what we want our slate to be next year. These fun, fantastical ideas, and like it's all escapism." And This Is Us was debuting that year, which was like, so we had sold this just as This Is Us. And by the time we got to January, they were like, "We love it, but we're only doing grounded," because This Is Us was such a huge hit.
Yeah.
So like everything had changed.
It changes on a dime. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
There's so much.
And then, so now I know, like, so you've been writing for years and stuff like that. And I know lately some stuff has been taking off more on the acting side, which is fascinating. And like pivoting.
It was never expected, you know, for all those years. I will say this, and I you know, there was a long time where I was like, I wasn't very creatively satisfied in what I was working on. Like, I tried to put my heart into it. I put everything, but you know, I was definitely trying to come up with ideas that sell more than maybe the idea that like my heart is invested in.
Totally.
I mean, no greater than like one of the last big things I've sold was Fruit Ninja movie. Like and I got all this press for it. And like, I don't give a shit about a Fruit Ninja movie. Like, I'm not like, the world needs this.
You're right.
This property needs to come to life.
I can sum up my entire career in Fruit Ninja. I will do that. Yeah.
And I remember there was a sort of epiphany moment where, so we got interviewed by New York Times Magazine because the Emojis movie was coming out. And so they thought, oh, what we'll do is we'll do a story about a parallel situation of the Fruit Ninja movie. Since the Emoji movie was kind of animated and all hush hush, they interviewed a bunch of us that were working on the Fruit Ninja movie. And I remember reading the article, and I thought that the guy was so fair and trying desperately to be kind. But as I kind of read it, I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm just like a snake oil sale. I'm just going out there, going into rooms, trying to figure out what people are going to buy. Like, I've been conditioned to do it for 7 years, like, and made a living at it and had insurance and, like this and
Such
that.
a big thing. Insurance.
And it's huge.
Insurance as an artist, like, it's huge.
No. And yeah, so it was at that point, and it was still like a year and a half after that we sort of had a bunch of things like not work out. I had been performing so much as a way to sort of express myself. Like, I'd been obsessively performing at night, and I started to fall into the world of clown, and, I was taking the things I'd learned in improv and the wrestling stuff you talked about. Like, I was sort of seeing, I'm like, oh my God, this is what makes me special. Is like, I have this way to get an audience angry at me, and like, I can get this reaction. Yeah. And so, but that was always like, oh, this is my thing. It's not for money. This is just my thing that I do for me. And then I was like, why have I separated what art I can make a living at and what art makes me happy, and that's kind of the journey I've been on the last few years of just being like, I don't want to work on anything that I don't love. Like, if I don't love it, and by the way, it's been super hard because, we all got fired by our agents, everyone in the Writers Guild, like, so many things had happened. In fact, last year, I barely, other than working on this show, Cake for FX, and working on that and writing for that, I didn't do a ton of writing. Like, I worked for Spiegelworld in Vegas and did some substituting for parts in their, like, as a clown in their shows. I traveled and I taught a bunch of places, taught clown, because I'd really fallen in love with this art form that I was like, oh, this makes me feel alive. And I was just kind of coming back into it before the, I don't know if you've heard, there's a virus or a bacteria. Yeah, I don't.
Should we be concerned?
It's been a real process getting back to it. Like getting back to generating work and being like, oh yeah, like the only way to sustain that is to make things that get you that excite you.
Yeah. Oh man, so many things I want to bounce around to. First off, I feel like we skimmed over Cake, so let's talk about Cake on FX, because that's well, now Cake is different than Two Pink Doors, correct?
No, but yes.
So, all right, so explain, because I've seen. So, I know I've seen. I think I've seen a little bit of both, but I've watched all of Two Pink Doors, which
Two Pink Doors is one of the things that was on. So Cake is essentially designed itself to be, it's like they what's the word? Curate a bunch of different artists who create small pieces that make up. It's a show on FX. I think it's on 1030s.
It's also on Hulu, I think.
It's on Hulu now.
Degree. Yeah.
So kind of the way we ended up there is there's a guy named Phil Burgers, aka Dr. Brown, and he's a clown, good friend of mine, and someone I'd worked with. Like he directed a play called Gerald I was in, and we were doing stuff out of his home theater, Lyric Hyperion, in Silver Lake.
And that's his theater?
That's his theater, yeah. It wasn't
awesome.
Always. When we started doing stuff there, it wasn't. But then the owner, Mark, decided he wanted to get out of the theater business. And Phil was like, okay, I'm going to take it over because I'm going to curate all this work. And by the way, the special Nate right now that's on Netflix, that came from the Lyric. Like a bunch of successful shows that went to Edinburgh Fringe are all from the Lyric. But we had done a bunch of fun things. And I was like saying to Phil, because Phil had told me once that he had this thing that he would do in Edinburgh where he would just have a bunch of like stand-ups come up and he would live direct them. And I'm like, oh, we should do a show Monday nights where you live direct. We'll pick like, I say we, he picked them. I didn't have any say. I don't want to take credit for anything. I was like, why don't you pick the clowns you want to work with the most? And we'll get like, you know, I don't know, 7, 10 of us. And then Monday nights we'll do scenes. We'll improvise scenes and you can direct us and we'll just, you know, just a way for all of us to get to play together. And so finally, you know, I kind of was the producer and he was like the director, creative mind behind it. We started doing these Monday nights and we created a bunch of work and stuff. And through that, so he was able to kind of go to FX and say, hey, we've got this really fun devising process that's a little different than writing, like sitting in a writing room. Like we put stuff up and the audience tells us where to go. And you know, I was, you know, kind of peripherally involved. Like I helped a little bit with the pitch language since I'd done it for years. Yeah. But him and a guy named Alex Plappinger, who's a producer, they went into Cake and they were like, this is Dr. Brown. This is the process that these artists do on Monday night. And we came up, what had happened was we had, he wanted to kind of, we had gone out one day looking around at different like locations and stuff because we're trying to figure out what to pitch. Mm-hmm. And he had just reacted very strongly to these 2 pink doors that were the storage area for Absolutely Pictures. Like this was just their 2 pink doors. Like they had these 2, and so all day we're kind of walking around and I said to him, I was like, well, you were so interested in those doors. Like, is there something there? And we ended up coming up with this idea of like a bunch of different scenarios all surrounding this one static shot of these 2 pink doors. Like essentially real clown work where like it's about timing and, you know, it's like, and so we ended up selling that to them and made these 5 or 6 shorts. And actually we did a second run of things called Last Day, which are 2 longer pieces. I think they're about 11, 12 minutes that they just haven't aired yet on Cake. Yeah. So yeah, so it's been super fun doing that, like, again, the 2 pink doors work we love, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah. I mean, that clowning group that is it seems so tight knit too, and what you guys did with 2 pink doors was so cool. Cause it's literally a static shot. It's like a camera could be set up on a tripod essentially. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is just, and it's great. It's theatrical in the way the timing plays out. It's super funny. Yeah, I mean, I loved it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And I thought you definitely had some moments where you shined in it. Did you?
It's tough. It's a tough group to shine in. It's a lot of really talented people.
Yeah, but you have a way of drawing attention. I feel like in a good way. But like you. I mean, even I think there was one thing where it was all about you, and like, wasn't there one where everybody blamed you or something? I feel like everybody kept getting mad at you for something, but
there's one where I'm a fire chief that I'm centered around me, and like it's all kind of me being a bit me being very sensitive, like a tough guy fire chief, but I'm very sensitive, and so like eventually like everyone's yelling at me and. They're all like hard. You know, the thing about clown too, Ryan, that like is the most fun part and most frustrating part is like usually like the idea that we love, like it doesn't like you hear it, you're like, you shouldn't shoot that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, oh no, we know, like we know. That's why it's funny to us. Like like it's like if you go to a clown show, like I feel like so I was in a group called Jetso, which Ryan and team perform, and like I always thought our best shows would be stuff that if you left the show and told your friends you thought you saw some funny show and they're like, what's it about? It would be a nightmare for you to be like, I don't know. It was a Japanese man was trying to see the mother of ghost mother. And they ended up in 30s in Berlin. Like it was like, that's what's fun about clown is like, you're really along for this nonsensical ride, but when it's done, it's really hard to string it back together. You know, it can only exist in that moment. And
do you think people do that? Do you think people go home and like, well, honey, what'd you see tonight? And like, all right, well, okay, if I remember.
I hope so.
I mean, yes, but I've never thought of it in the terms of people trying to recap what we do as improvisers or clowns. You know.
Well, you know, I know for a fact. I'm sure they did it with Jetso, but I know for a fact, like last year and a little in 2018, I started doing these shows that I direct, like they're called Chad Live Directs a Workshop. And here's the bit. The bit is that people come and I come out and I go, we have a live musician and we have like 8 to 10 clowns all dressed in black, looking very scared.
Mhm.
And I come out and I go, thank you very much. And you can stop the music. And I'm like, listen, first thing you need to know is this is not a show. And I stole that from Phil. Phil would always say that before Monday nights, but he would say it for real. Like he was really like, I don't want any pressure. So I was like, I'm going to turn it into a bit, right? Because he would say it for real. And so I would be like, this is not a show. It is the culmination of 6 weeks of hard training by these students over here. And the fact is that, when you're in a class, all the other students support you because they've grown fond of you, but also they're afraid to fail themselves. But you people have no obligation to laugh at these people. You don't know, they're strangers. And I would always say this line, and I would always sometimes get a gasp, which I'd be like, don't give it up too easy. I was like, if it's not funny, let them sit in their failure. I said, they need to know if they're really meant to do this. So then you put on the audience this intense pressure of like, if they don't love it, these students will leave here. And by the way, when I say students, a lot of these people are like super successful working actors, comedians, but yet because I'm so serious, they buy it. Right. And I know for a fact those shows, I've had people tell me, it's like, I don't know what to tell. 'Cause what we do during that hour is so stupid that it's almost impossible to describe to a person what the show was, which is like my goal. I just want it to be, because I'm screaming, I'm yelling, and I'm like, you don't belong here. And then the audience is turning on me. And it's
one of the wildest shows in a great way. Like it's you never know what to expect. It's there's shock value, there's intelligence stuff, there's emotional range, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's very fascinating. There are also like, it is funny how many people are quietly successful in those kind of things too. I've been watching.
I know, and they love playing nobodies. You know what I mean? And on occasion, if someone would be on the show, and by the way, I've had people come through, like my buddy Manwar, he did the show and like went on, and now like he's on TV all the time, and he was on just network television constantly in England, right? Like, but no one knew him here. And like I had people from overseas do the show, and no one knows him. And I'm like, oh, if you knew this person's got 100,000 followers, like but if it is someone who is like has some level of fame, and I think the audience knows, I will totally be like, well, congratulations, you've just run Adult Swim. You're nothing here. Congratulations. You've come back to zero. So just know that none of that matters to us. And like, they love it. The performers, right? Because it's like, right. Like,
there's so much,
it's been so fun.
It's got to be nice to like get rid of that pressure, because it's, I don't know, who wants all that pressure every time you step on stage when you're just trying to create and have fun a little bit too. And so it's nice to take that off, I would think.
I would say I definitely think it's that, but there's another side to it too, where some of these performers, like we get to a point, like even me on Catsby, which is a show that you show ran that show, we co-produced it. Like, I still love doing the show if it comes back, when it comes back.
Right.
But definitely that's the Homer crowd of all time. Like I feel like I could do no wrong in that show. Like people know me. If they're there, they're probably relate. Like, maybe there's 10 people there who don't know me, and like, so, but a lot of these comics, especially the alt comics that would do it, are part of a scene where they're established, and they walk out and they're like, oh, gotta get this microphone, and everyone laughs because they're like, so now like the idea of like, oh, they're not gonna give it up. Like, like they love it. Like the real performers, they don't want that. Real performers don't want to go out and everything they throw hits. Like they want to go out and like figure it out. And like, and so, it's been, we had some really, before we had some great stuff set up, and, we'll be back again at some point, but I know every real comic I saw who came to the show or saw the show afterwards was like, I want you to yell at me. Like, I want you to humiliate me. Like, I want to see if I can pull this, like, cause there is this like an adrenaline to it,
Yeah. That's awesome. It's great work. And I love what you guys are doing with it. And especially with, like it's funny. I keep thinking, I'm like, you've had a big year. You've had a great year. You were on AGT also for a split second.
Oh my God.
Which is,
I was.
wait, were you starting to go?
that all happened
That was
the week before quarantine.
you got the
started.
live audience though, which not everybody got.
I got the live
And
audience.
That's
I'd spent 4 months. So I have like one of the things I also did last year was I've been wanting to do more clown, like in conventional places, like stand-up clubs. And
mhm.
so I had created a bunch of bits and I, got to do a really bunch of fun shows. Oh my God. I almost kicked over my ring light.
Yeah, everything just goes dark.
So I had this one act, which I still do, and I love this act. And I just
Mhm.
did it the other day on a Zoom show, but I play the security guard at the club.
Mhm.
And I'll actually hang out all night at the club, like the security. I'll tell people the bathroom's over there. I talk in a Boston accent, so I'm like, oh, okay, have a good time. And then in the middle of the show, I have the host be like, hey, the Marco from security, and I go on stage and I pretend I found a notebook that belongs to one of the open mic comics, and sometimes that's enough, but sometimes depending on the room, I'll say I found in the bathroom where someone flushed a bunch of paper towels down the toilet.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So they're in trouble, right? This person. And then I open this book and I start reading, like, I write these jokes. I love, like, they're terrible. Like, I write the worst jokes I can think of. And this guy just reads these jokes deadpan. And he doesn't care about the jokes. And he gets angrier and angrier at the jokes, right? Because they're so bad. And so I, during my travels to Vegas and like working with Spiegel World, I also worked for Piff the Magic Dragon, who was an AGT super all-star. Like I think he got second place one season, and he has a show in Vegas. He's a super amazing guy, like one of my favorite people in Vegas. And I went and he had me open for him at some big shows that I've ever done. And I got some footage of it. And he was like, you should try to get on AGT. So he gave me a contact and they were interested and they saw the act. They're like, this is great. And very early on, I can't say for sure that I had better instincts, but I guess part of me was like, I don't know. Like they came up with this very detailed way that I'd be introduced.
Okay.
Right? That I would be in the audience.
You weren't doing security at AGT?
Just the same as the bit.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome.
And like systematically, and by the way, it was a perfectly fine experience. I mean, it was gruesome the day it happened, but I mean, I bombed, by the way, if you all can't tell by now. But
so Sophia buzzed you, man. I watched it.
Yeah, everybody, I got 4.
Did they? Oh, okay. I think the clip ended up with her, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it was
funny.
A much longer, much more grueling thing than you saw. The clip you saw was nothing.
They're like, let him keep going. This poor guy. Now, did they know you were a comic, or did they think you were part of the audience?
No, but that's the whole thing. There was this whole thing that they did where they're like, the judges won't know you're a comic, and like the first thing that happened where I knew it was going to go badly was, hey, listen, I wear this outfit. It says security on the chest. It says security in the hat. It's a very silly clown outfit.
Yeah.
But they were like, we want you to dress like the real security guards. I'm like, what do they dress in? Black blazer, black shirt, black slacks. I'm like, so you just want me to go out there? Like, there's nothing fun. Like, that's like, I'm not compromised. Like a clown comes dressed in a way that you feel bad for them. Like,
well, and you've done some where you had the bomb vest strapped to you, and you were you were forced to tell these jokes.
Yeah, like I had that bit. I would have loved to have done that bit, but they were like, can
you imagine if they didn't know that you were walking on as that? And
it would have been a disaster. I mean, it couldn't be, but this is so. They're like, you're gonna work all day as security, and then in the middle of the show, you're gonna come up and do your bit. I'm like, I said, okay. I said, I was like, yeah, you guys know, like, no, it's going to be great and this and that. And by the way, to be fair, probably at some point I thought it was a good idea. But as it went on, I'm like, I'd rather just come out in my outfit and do my voice and be this guy Mako, So the day I'm there is like just a day of killers. Like all these acts are amazing. And I'm just like, I'm working all day, Ryan. And it's hot. Yeah. It's March and it's
You're
like
doing
90
security.
degrees. You could see me. People saw
God.
me. I was opening doors for like everyone in the limo entrances.
And
I'm sweating. I'm tired. I'm like, I didn't get to so everyone else is in a green room. I'm working all day.
It's amazing.
With this stupid ass notebook. And so I'm sitting there and you have to understand, like, I know this act sounds very stupid and it is, but it's like a meta comedy act. Right. The idea is that I'm deconstructing how to tell jokes. It's not an act for kids. Right? Like it's not, the jokes aren't funny. It's the idea that I'm the last person who should tell the jokes. Just like the bomber bit. Like,
yeah.
this cop has to
Yep.
tell the joke. I'm out there opening these limo doors for Sofia Vergara and Heidi Klum, and like I'm out there and I'm in these shots, and all of a sudden I see a bunch of buses show up. And when I say a bunch, I mean like maybe 5. And all 10-year-olds come off these buses. So what they do, the America's Got Talent, is part of the audience is just massive groups of kids from schools that get like a school trip. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm watching this and I'm like, I'm already sweating and tired. I'm like, oh my God, half of this audience is children. Half of this audience is not going to get the basic concept of this bit, right? And
Yeah.
shame on me that I didn't know this, right? I just always assumed it was families. And like, if there was 2 kids, there'd be a dad and a mom, or a grandma, and like whatever, or 2 moms. But it would just be like, it was an even sort of thing. So this audience is, and again, all the acts are better than my act too. I should mention all the acts are better than my act. And they keep moving me later and later in this 3-hour taping.
So you're just doing more and more security.
More and more security. I'll keep working. And
my God.
I also had a heart catheterization the next day, just so you know. The whole day I was there, I was getting a heart catherization at 5 a.m. the next day.
Oh my
so like,
goodness.
so then they moved me to the last act. And so I went to this tech rehearsal, and it was like, I was like, look, I told him, I was like, it has to happen really fast. Like, hand me the notebook and I'll run up and I'll talk while I'll interrupt the warm-up guy. Like, we have to create some chaos. Sure, absolutely. By the time this happened, I think everyone was tired and they just botched my entrance. And like, it was total silence. Everyone wants to go home. It was like a minute of silence. And then the warm-up guy goes, all right, it's time for our last act. And I'm like, oh my God, no.
Oh,
Then this guy comes in, gives me the notebook. So there was a whole thing that was supposed to happen that they were going to film secretly. Now the whole place is watching. Me be handed this notebook. They watch me walk up onto the stage. Before I can say anything, Sofia Vergara goes, "Are you Chad Damiani?" I was like, what the hell? What the hell? I was like, pardon me, ma'am? No, my name's Mako. And she goes, because there's only one contestant left on our call sheet. These motherfuckers put me on the sheet. They put me on the sheet. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am.
My God.
So then I start telling these jokes, and the first one gets kind of a little laugh. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can pull this off. By the second one, the booing starts, right? They're booing me. And like, they let me, and by the way, they let me tell all like 4 jokes in a row, and they just kept Xing me after every one.
Oh no.
And I had done this, they had come up with this thing. They're like, you're going to say that you found this bathroom in this book in Terry Cruz's private bathroom. Okay. I was like, okay. And they were like, Terry doesn't have a bathroom. And by the way, when I saw the backstage area, there was no private, like everyone's just in like, so they set me up to mention a bathroom that they knew didn't exist. Like, they don't have, like,
my goodness.
Terry Crews, to his credit, was trying to, I think, make the bit work, but did something that was so heartbreaking. He runs out after I get X'd. He's a massive human being. Rips the book out of my hand. Throws it up and drop kicks my joke book into I never saw it again. Drop kicks my joke book into the crowd.
That's
and I'm
amazing.
like, and I'm just like, I'm like, and by the way, as clowns, we like to fail. I did not like this. This was not fun. Like, it was just like children. Boo, we hate you. This was the worst.
No.
And then the judges are like, this is the most uninspired. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. This and that. I'm just
my God.
It was, and now it all got
that's
boiled
brutal.
down to like a 30-second, perfectly innocuous clip that I have now. So it's all fun. But like, boy, what? I mean, just like, I was like, boy. And you know, I'm a teacher too. Like, that's one of the ways I've started making money is,
right.
And I'll just sit there. I can't tell you how many times I pontificate and like proselytize to students that like, you have to love to fail. You have to love to fail. And in that moment, I'm like, it does not feel good. Like, I was just like, like, I'm kind of a hypocrite because I fucking hate this.
Yeah. Especially when it doesn't go like when you had stuff in mind and it just doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it didn't have a shot at that point.
Oh no, I never. But by the way, I should be clear with the audience that they had, which I could have found out. Like, I could have done research to find out who watches this show.
You weren't opening limos all day.
Yeah, right. In like 90-degree weather.
Yeah.
I would have failed no matter what. Like, this fact would not have worked. But like, they just kind of put me in a position to fail so epically, but like not in a fun way, you know, like like, and not know what, because I tried to engage them. I'm like, can I just say 2 things about, and they're like, we think you've said, and they're tired to, like, I don't blame the judges. They're exhausted. They've been there 3 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like the longest drive home.
They're like,
ever.
just answer me. Are you Chad Damiani or not? We're on our
Could you imagine?
Stop doing the voice and tell me who. No.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, like everything that could burn this bit, they did.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, what a way to, like, when you think about this happened, and then like 3 days later, the LA closed. Like, so all the shows were gone. So I didn't even have like a chance to do a show and like be like, oh right, I'm really good at this. Like, people were like, you know what I mean? This was like my last performance experience before we started doing shows in the park months later, like 3 months later, you know?
Yeah. Which I think is an awesome thing. You guys have been handling the pandemic in a cool way of doing these shows in the zoo, in the park as well. You've done a couple different shows,
well, I mean,
outdoor shows during the pandemic. We're
not doing them right now because things are so crazy. Like, but you know, I am hoping by like maybe by February, I'm hoping things kind of suss out. I mean, I know like it's not going to be sooner, even though they're telling us it might be sooner. Yeah. But yeah, around, I'd say June, we started one in Alhambra Park out here in Los Angeles, outside of Los Angeles, more near like Pasadena. And then a bunch of us who did the cake stuff and also did the Monday nights, and a few other friends of ours, we started doing one at the old zoo, the enclosures in Griffith Park, where they sort of you have access to where they used to keep the lions and other animals. And it saved me in a lot of ways this summer. You know, I was really just felt rudderless, and like I didn't have many but then I had these 2 shows a week for 6 months, and I learned a ton. You know, you have to perform very differently outside. You know, you have a mask on, like these are masks. We wore masks, the audience wore masks. And like, I was already, I think, a pretty physical performer. And I was like, it wasn't enough. Like, I had to be even more physical. Like, I had to play so that I could not look away, you know, like, and it's
so hard. I mean, you're taking away half of your face, which, you know, is such a huge tool. Like, I mean, luckily you have some of that physicality and stuff to use, which is nice. But I mean, to take away with a mask half of your, you know, your expression, that's tough.
Well, I had 2 very different experiences because like in the Alhambra show, it was like you said, the mask, and we dressed in costumes in the Alhambra show. We were trying to offset, like we were trying to find ways. And what I found with the mask was that like the eyes are what's most important for sure. Your eyes are more important than your smile or your grimace or whatever. But also that that you could use the mask to your benefit because the audience sees you as an underdog, you know? So if you're being very big and like, you know, really finding all these big expressions, then the mask kind of now makes them focus on your eyes. And then if you throw in a bad accent, you know, like, and they can't see your mouth doing it, that like, so like I said, I feel like I gained all these new tricks. The show in the zoo, in fact, hold on, stay right there. We work with neutral mask and like mask work. Yeah. I'm just making this now. I'm building this mask.
You making it?
I made this, yeah. So if you can see, I took a neutral mask, which is sort of, and then Natalie Palomides, go watch Nate on Netflix, a good friend of mine. She's been helping us.
Awesome.
And so you make these masks, and we're making because we have to wait, you know, a month, 2 months. We're all kind of making masks, and we're trying to. But we did these shows in full masks. Wow. And it was such a great learning experience too. Of like, oh right, there's so much we can express with our bodies, and here we have to, you know, because when you wear the mask, you also have to be silent. Yeah. You know, like that's kind of the rules of the mask. So, it was this great experience where. Like if you have a mask on and you just do this, you get a big reaction. The audience is like, oh, you know, or you just go like this, like these things that we take for granted. Oh yeah, with a mask, especially because the mask isn't moving. Yeah. So you're like,
that's awesome.
So yeah, like I do feel very grateful. Not that I didn't put work in to make these shows happen, but I feel grateful that I was directed that way, you know.
No, it's awesome.
But we learned a bunch, and I'm excited. You know, we're not going to be performing anytime soon next year. I'm excited to get back to these shows when things calm down, maybe in February, and learn some more. You know.
Yeah. And then we're kind of winding down a little bit, but I do want to talk about the other thing you're doing that's awesome right now, especially during the pandemic, is you are teaching, which you mentioned. You're doing Zoom classes with the clowning and aspects and stuff.
I am taking a little break now because I'm exhausted. But what happened essentially was, I was traveling and teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and when the pandemic first started, I just felt like there's just no way to teach clown online. Like
Mm-hmm.
it is so about the connection with audience and this and that, and I kind of just ruled it out. But as time passed, and I was also just dealing with like not having any connection to the things, the art that I loved. I just started kind of experimenting with small groups of students, and we found a way. We found a way to kind of use the interface of Zoom and like turning your camera on and off, and making entrances and using this like using the other students to create like a dynamic way to present, like you're presenting like to other students. And it was like there was a couple weeks or maybe a month where it was like I have a couple successes and more failures and successes. But as time passed, I was like, oh, I think I understand what this is. And for me, who, tends to play high status, like a white clown, I was like, oh, this is performative for me. Like now I have to keep the energy up of these classes. Like I do something where, you sort of create like tableaus in your Zoom box, and then I screenshot it and I write notes on it, like I insult everyone or praise. Like I was like, oh great, this is like for me. And yeah, I ran a bunch of like 3 months of classes, sold them all out. I was so grateful. And and I think I'll probably go back and do it in February again. And it's not like, to me, is it conventional classic clown? No. Is it an opportunity to force yourself to find a way to connect and be creative under duress and difficult circumstances? Yes. And at the end of the day, that's what clowning is. Clowning is about, you're the uninvited guest. No one wants you here, but you're going to go on stage and figure out a way. You're going to figure out a way to stay. And in staying, you're going to get all these people who want you to leave to love you. So that's just, in general, art is like, things change and you find a new way to sort of chase the same thing, So that was crucial to me this year. And I was so grateful to get to do it, and also get to work with people from Toronto and the East Coast, and, a lot of people from Portland and San Diego and San Francisco. I got to work with people from Finland and South Africa and Brazil. It was really cool.
The Zoom thing opens up everybody to it. It's awesome. And you were nice enough to let me drop in on a class this last week.
That was fun, right?
It was super fun to experience. And it was interesting. Like there's actually like some of the stuff you were teaching, I think even helps in terms of like acting skills and stuff. And like we were doing facial, the facial expressions and stuff, going from 100% down to 1%, and just fine tuning your tools and like, playing with different emotions and just knowing what your face is doing when it's doing, and I don't know, it was super fun. And but I thought there was a lot to take away from it also. It was really cool.
I think too, and this is something I've kind of gained from this year, like I said, we're going to have to find some good things from 2020, right? So we don't touch our faces as much anymore. Like that's good, right? Camp is not a bad thing. But like, you don't put the things you love on pause.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of us were like, well, I'm just going to sit this out, and all the things that I did that I liked, whether that's like your need to exercise, or your need to sort of spend quality time with people, or your need to perform. Like, you don't simply go, I just don't do that anymore because it's not as easy or it's not ideal, So like, I definitely think I'll take that with me forever. And like you said, like, for an actor, a stand-up, an improviser, a clown, like if this is something that matters to you, find a way to play, find a way to do this thing, and stop worrying about it not being ideal, and worry more about that this thing will sort to atrophy if you don't like feed it something, anything, so maybe we'll be more grateful when stuff comes back, 2026, 2027. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Whenever it comes back around. Man, what a good place to end on. That was awesome. I've enjoyed having you on, Chad. This is amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, Ryan. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And then people can follow you at Chad Damiani on the social medias.
The Chad Damiani. I could have gotten Chad Damiani in all but two. Now I look back and I don't even use those two. But it's I'm mostly on Instagram. The Chad Damiani. Also at Jetso Time on Twitter. For whatever reason, I have not been able to get that other Twitter account any action.
Yeah, I just found out there's another Ryan Hansinger like on social medias. I was like, what?
Really? Is this your first run-in with another Ryan Hansinger?
The exact first and last name? Yeah, that's weird.
There's a Chad Damiani that if I Google myself, and I do, that he has a video on YouTube, and I think I've watched it 10 of the 72 times it's been viewed.
Yeah.
And he just reviews a concrete mixer. Like, it's a very straightforward, like, is this a good concrete mixer or not? And I just can't stop watching it. I'm just like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like a minute long, and I'm like, I am just keeping this guy's YouTube page alive. You know?
Yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, so follow him. You can check it out for shows, for upcoming classes and things like that. But yeah, definitely check out the Cake, Two Pink Doors, the HGT. No, but definitely check out the stuff on Hulu. It's amazing. It's really impressive. Chad, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be seeing each other again soon.
Take care, Ryan. Take care, people of podcast land.
Thanks for tuning in to A Bit Unraveled. I'm Ryan Hansinger. We'll see you next week.